proceedings of this session to our moderator.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody, and thank you all for being here at this relatively early hour on a Saturday morning. My name is Dipta Shah, and I work at a boutique transaction advisory and management consulting company called 54i, which is completely dedicated to helping grow Nepal's digital ecosystem. I'm honored to be moderating this panel of esteemed individuals on a topic that's of intense and immense interest to me personally, but also of relevance to the world in which we exist. A quick word of thanks to the Kantipur Media Group for organizing this phenomenal event, and to the organizers, who are many, and without whom an event of this ambition and scale would just simply not be possible. So thank you very much. Without delay, let's get to the heart of the matter, the future of the digital world. So what exactly is the digital world? And how does this translate into the digital economy? Are these one and the same? Are they different? They're undefined, is what they are. And so please allow me to walk through a series of personal anecdotes and observations to kind of help contextualize and bound the conversation that will follow, okay? So on any typical day, before I go to sleep, I'll ask Siri to set my alarm for the next morning. When I wake up, Microsoft's To-Do app will have ordered and sequenced the number of tasks that I need to finish for the day, and it's served right before me on my phone. I'll start catching up on email, and Google will help me finish my sentences before I can even think about what I'm writing. And while I'm typing, Alexa will ask me, based on my presence in the room, if I'd like to play my favorite playlist on the speaker. And then, I may choose in between emails to pay my utility bills using my handy eSeva PhonePe app. And it's right there at my fingertips to execute as and when I need to. And then, in the midst of this back and forth, I have a cup of coffee, and then my computer will remind me again that my next appointment is 45 minutes away. And it'll also have a footnote there saying, and by the way, because traffic is heavy this morning, you want to allocate an additional 15 minutes to get to where you need to go. And so this sort of back and forth transition between the metaphysical and the digital worlds is how I exist, okay? And this speaks really to the convenience of what a hyper-connected world looks like, feels like, and the resulting global digital economy that has become intertwined with our human condition. But as the saying goes, this is only one side of the coin. The other side, which is increasingly an afterthought, is the subconscious delegation of freedoms and fine print relegation of personally identifiable, confidential information, willingly disclosed in the pursuit of digital connectivity. And this is the darker side of the equation. As recently as the World Economic Forum in 2019, it was renowned author and historian Yuval Noah Harari who launched a scathing warning of what may come by equating technological disruption on par with ecological collapse and nuclear Armageddon. Harari warned against the creation of a global useless class and of the rise of data colonialism. He warned against the creation of unprecedented inequality, not just between classes, but also between countries. And he warned sternly against the rise of digital dictatorships. Each of these alternate futures is enabled by the unprecedented connectivity that the digital revolution has enabled, and the growing digital divide that has emerged and continues unabated. So with this juxtaposition of benefits versus risks of the digital world as context, I'd like to request our panelist, Rajyeshwari Ghosh, to share her thoughts on the narrowing divide between the digital and the metaphysical spaces, and how through her experiences and practice, based in the quantum paradigm, we might strive to achieve a better balance while retaining aspects that define our humanity. So Rajyeshwari, if you could please educate us a little bit about this, and in the process, maybe introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you, Dipta. First of all, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be over here. A little bit about my background. I'm a technologist, but at the same time, I am also a spiritual practitioner. That went on parallelly for almost 20 years. I was educated in finance and I worked in technology domain, so very mechanistic, Newtonian, very rigid, structured, and very numbers driven. So my question to me was once, do I have any freedom left in me? So is that what machine is going to dictate my entire life and tell me what to do? Am I going to get consultation for my health through AI, through telehealth, or can I go and see a doctor? Questions like that bogged me. So I asked myself these very fundamental existential questions. Who am I? And what I'm here for? So that where I converged between technology, that's science at one side, and also spirituality, which is the quantum space. What is quantum? Quantum is the measurement of energy, which is quanta. So it's based on spiritual intelligence, vibrations, energies, frequency. So this is nothing new. In fact, this is the only ancient wisdom which was always there, which is there now, and which will always be. We just have to quantumize ourselves, and we kind of have to redig and reconnect within. That's also reimagining connectivity from a very different perspective, from a metaphysical perspective, and have very deeper question what connectivity, what individualism would look like in the digital world. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much for that very interesting perspective, Rajyeshwari. I'd like to now move on to our friend Alberto Grignolo and ask for him to share his perspectives. So as a proven entrepreneur and now an investor who's in the process of paying it forward, do you think your journey would have been possible in the absence of a hyper-connected world? And what would you have done differently, looking back in hindsight, if anything, to help strike a better balance between digitally enabled efficiency and what we need to preserve the privacy of the hundreds and thousands of customers who have been on your platform? So over to you.
Thank you very much, Dipta, and thank you very much to you all for hosting me today in this beautiful and interesting context. So my story is a simple one, and one which is keeping repeating again and again in the words since the last 20 years. Straight out of the university, I helped co-founding YOOX, which and that was 20 years ago, which in the following 20 years became the leading global platform for fashion and luxury e-commerce. Becoming a billion-dollar plus company listed on the stock exchange, but starting out of the classical basement in a small Italian town. And ending up being, going from 0 to 4,000 employees in, as you were saying, a connected world whereby we had offices in Europe, United States, and throughout Asia. So today I think I'm speaking on this stage on behalf of the incredible opportunities that a connected world is offering to entrepreneurship, but as the Patao CEO said right before us, also the incredible opportunities that connectivity is offering to the people, to our economies, and especially in developing countries to young people to develop themselves and become part of a wealthier and more equal world in terms of opportunities and in terms of outcomes. So let me answer your question, raising maybe 4 simple and very fast points. The first one is that connectivity is enabling what Adam Smith in the 18th century thought was the perfect market. So connectivity is allowing sharing information, availability of people offering product and services, and people demanding for product and services. And this per se allows for a greater level of wealth and a greater level of well-being among people. The second angle is, as you were mentioning, about efficiency. So think about what Amazon is doing in the developed world, in the United States, in supporting the new retail model. Think about what Alibaba has been doing in China throughout the last 10 or 15 years. Think to what the Taobao villages mean for backwaters China. And think about the incredible opportunity that only through a digitally connected world trickle down to the masses, to everybody. The third point is about knowledge and about education. And I think that in the medium term, by far, it will play out as the most relevant benefit that connectivity will deliver to people. The possibility of sharing information from Italy, of Nepal, or from the United States, of China. I mean, sharing knowledge will make people better off by improving their capability of understanding the world they live in. And finally, the last great benefit that I see is about the social connection that a connected world allows for. So let me, in this sense, highlight a very short history about myself. I come from Italy. Italy, for centuries, has been a country of emigrants. My grandfather himself emigrated to United States about 100 years ago, from a very, very poor village in a very, very poor country. And he worked in the United States for about 20 years. He came back only once, and he came back upon the notice that his mother was ill, was sick. And the notice took so long, the letter took so long from Italy to United States to arrive, and the connectivity was so poor for him coming back. He arrived in the village the day after his mother, my grandmother, was buried. Imagine the incredible advantages of a world like the one we live in which we can have instant notice of whatever happens to our loved ones throughout the world, and the invaluable benefit that this brings to our lives. So this is the reason why I'm such an unabashed advocate of the benefits of connectivity.
Thank you very much, Alberto. Now moving from a global entrepreneur to a national, local entrepreneur, Biswas. So Biswas, what's been your experience as a Nepali entrepreneur extreme, a mentor, and ecosystem builder? And how do you, as the president of Nepal's largest digital financial services company, take measures in your day-to-day business that balance the need for efficient, transparent provision of financial services with protecting the privacy of the data of the millions of customers who ride your platform? And how do you do this systematically?
Thank you, Dipta. First of all, I want to share our vision as a company. So we want to be the household brand in Nepal that every Nepali use to meet their daily financial need every single day. So that's where we are coming from. And being a largest fintech company in this country, we always respect the value of privacy as well as data uses. So to give a brief background of our company, what we have done in last 15 years, we started Nepal's first wallet company back in 2009. And today we have like almost presence of 80,000 outlets across Nepal. And we touch more than 11 million Nepalese through our platform. So that means we produce tons of data every single day. We process 500,000 transactions every single day. So if we use those data for a personal benefit, that will be considered as crime, and we want to use to make livelihood better for Nepalese. We want to use those data to give better insight for the Nepalese living in this country. And I'll share one story which is like contextual to my conversation. So data is important, we all know, and data will be the only thing that brings equality in this country. Let's say we open a weather app every single day and see what's the temperature predicted for today, tomorrow, and day after. So 3 measures are taken consideration, basically temperature, wind, and then the pressure. But not only 3 data gives you the insight of the hourly temperature, which is going to be happen in like next 3 days. So let's say we have a similar data produced in the healthcare industry, which is like centrally collected and shows the insight of Nepalese healthcare or health indicator that is changing every single day and every single year or every single season. So if we combine 2 data, then we'll have a better insight to figure out if we have a consistent temperature from -2 to -7 for a week, and if that is a foggy weather in that particular region, maybe 2% to 5% people are infected with the viral. So if we utilize the data in similar way to create a value for the community so that the government or stakeholder will have the insight to take a necessary measures to cure before it's happening in a viral or like in a uncontrollable way. So what I see as being a leading fintech player in this country and a highest taxpayer on a IT vertical, our nation is in a premature stage in a digital world. Most of the backend are still undigitized, and most of the backend or the source are still unable to create a data. So we need to think of those critical data which will be helpful to predict and forecast the better way of living, to suggest Nepalese the better solution is much more important than caring of like how we're going to secure the data. At the same time, what I say is like, as Prime Minister clearly mentioned, 20th century was like a fuel century, then 21st century is a data century. And definitely we need to have a proper guidelines, how we are using the data, how we are using the personal information, and how we are using those data to create a value. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Biswas. And I think this is a really good segue into a connected conversation that I want to have on digital. The domains that you mentioned, Biswas, very interesting because you had a private sector overlay on the response to the question I asked, but you introduced the domain of public policy and the relevance of what public policy is when it comes to protecting citizens, data, so on and so forth. You also raised a very interesting point, the second point that I'd like to kind of tease out a little bit. We've so far had conversations about connectivity as described by connecting individuals and maybe businesses. You took that a step further and went into the domain of connecting data points across platforms, across applications, across usage, which again amplifies the need for public policy to be introduced to help control the migration of those data points with consent from one platform to another. Shifting gears, but coming back to the core session, the theme of the session, there's another aspect of digital connectivity and disruption that we should probably take some time to reflect on, right? So disruption as a perpetual process versus a point-in-time event, okay? And this is a very relevant sort of context when you take into consideration what it means for the future of employment, what it means for jobs, right? So even though we talk about disruption and connectivity as events that have transpired, in reality, these events are transpiring all around us and in perpetuity, okay? So does more connectivity augment or negate the opportunity set for meaningful employment? And on this topic, I'd like to start with Alberto, please. Maybe you could enlighten us a little bit, through your experiences as a founder and now an investor, what are the sorts of skill sets that you're seeing that are relevant to the connected world? And how do you see people who you work with and who work for your companies adapting to this need to perpetually evolve?
Yeah, thank you very much, Dipta. Skills of people are what make things happen, by definition, in whichever organization. You mentioned the word disruption. This is a word which is cyclically disrupted by new technologies. Last week marked the passing of the guy who invented the definition of disruption, which was an MIT professor, which back in 1997 published a book called The Innovator's Dilemma. And basically was advocating that big organizations would not have been as good as small and nimble startups in bringing up change, mostly because they had to defend their own critical assets. So their own business model, their own market positioning, their own capability of delivering services and goods in a certain way to the final customer. Startups were in a better position to disrupt such equilibrium because they were not burdened by somehow the legacy of the past in terms of business model, in terms of assets, and in terms of mindset. And that, I think, answers pretty much your question. And this is also the reason why, personally, I'm so optimistic about the opportunity of a country like Nepal in being a relevant part of the future of technology in this constantly disrupted world. You talked about skills. You need, the first skill you need is optimism about the future, is the belief that the change you are bringing to your own way of delivering the goods and services you are delivering to the market is contributing to creating a better world. This is, I think, skill number one, because makes you self-conscious of your capability and qualifies you in terms of your efforts and your focus. The second skill is the will to constantly understand and reskill yourself and upskill yourself in a world which is constantly changing. New technologies, new business models, new way of accomplishing a company's purpose and mission requires individuals to constantly upgrade, constantly face the opportunities set by an ever-changing world. which again is a reason why a country with a median age of 22.4 years, as I heard yesterday, has such an incredible opportunity in the world stage in the next 10 or 20 years.
Thank you, Alberto. And you know, I'd like to catch on to just one phrase that you used in response to my question. You said, how can we create a better world, okay? And on that topic, Rajyeshwari, if I may, there is a cost to this perpetual change, right? The need to adapt almost in perpetuity to technologies that are coming online and going. And there is a human cost, a human element to all this. When you speak with your clients, when you advise them, what do you tell them on how they might be able to keep a better work-life balance in a perpetual motion sort of environment? How do you deal with that aspect of connectivity?
Sure. So we are talking about, Dipta, how we really prepare ourselves for the future of the digital world from our skill set standpoint. So I was recently going through this book of Deepak Chopra called Meta-Human. And what Meta-Human talks about is unleashing the hidden potentials that is latent in every human being. So in a way, technology or the digital world is making us think again what it really means to be human again. So we have 3 layers of mind. One is the conscious layer, which is about 10 to 15%. The second is the subconscious layer, which is about 20 to 25%. And then the last layer is the unconscious layer, right? So through meditation, mindfulness, meditative writing, which I am practicing for more than 20 years now, we can unleash, untap our hidden potential. So that is one of the very, very, very crucial part in the future of the digital world. Why I say so is because, number one, if AI is going to take up a lot of jobs, it will take up a lot of jobs, both the manual jobs and also professional jobs. And what I see, when I say professional jobs, I'm talking about jobs from doctors, lawyers, accountants, people who are not actually applying their thought process. They're not applying their intellect. Therefore, it is absolutely important to develop our creative intelligence and the ability to perpetually innovate. And to answer your question, to point to that part, Dipta, we have to be constantly in the metaphysical mode of knowing where we are today, again applying that in the system development life cycle, which is the digital part, knowing, being where we are, that is the current version, then becoming with the knowledge of what is happening around the world with the change requests and stuff, and then again going to the next version of ourselves, which is the newer version of being. So again, boiling down again to the basics, one, we have to develop our holistic skills of spiritual intelligence, emotional intelligence, creative intelligence, and social intelligence, because all of these are going to be very important in the digital ecosystem. And the second part is the technological know-how, the digital literacy. Now, so for applying in Nepal's environment particularly, I went to Patan yesterday, and I just loved it. It's very community-based environment Nepal has, and I also went to see the stupa, which has the, the Buddhist stupa where the monks were chanting and all of that. So to bring that flavor, one, that community-based feeling is already there, so that digital literacy can be leveraged through that, through the community feeling. And second is, the quantum paradigm is already been part of Nepal's ecosystem since time immemorial. So please leverage that, because Nepal has huge potential. Digital world and quantum world can coexist parallelly, and it would be a win-win for Nepal, and I'm pretty sure about that.
Thank you so much, Rajyeshwari, for a very, very sort of optimistic tone there. And I agree completely I think the potential here is untapped. I think there's a lot of potential in the country. And the more of sort of forums like these and discussions that we can have to in-source perspectives like yours from external markets, the better off we are. And also kind of to touch upon something interesting that you mentioned, not explicitly, but you alluded to, this notion that AI and the coming digital revolution and connectivity is going to impact just blue-collar jobs. So that there's like this almost undercurrent of thought that people think, okay, look, technology is coming. Yeah, okay, like if I'm driving a car for a living, that might be an issue. If I'm doing manual labor, that might be an issue. But you raise a very interesting point. It's not just those sorts of jobs that are at risk. In fact, white-collar jobs that are equally at risk, right? So if there's something that can be automated as a result of enhanced connectivity, it shall be, is the general premise. So thank you for bringing that point up. Now, bringing this conversation back to Nepal, this notion that all forms of jobs can be disrupted, and connectivity leads to perhaps a little bit more social upheaval than we would anticipate naturally, right? What are you seeing in the labor force in your company, Biswas? How is this manifestation of change changing the way you go to market?
Labor force, I didn't get it.
The question being, how is your team changing as the need for new skills, new technologies are coming online? How are you ensuring that in Nepal you keep up with the constant change that's happening globally?
Yeah, so what we experience in our journey is like what we are trying to do is novel to this country and it's completely like unique, which haven't practiced before. So getting a first of all, like identifying what is most needed and what needs to be done to cater mass is very important. And that needs a lot of insight from across the geography, which is like from urban to a rural area, what their perception on their daily life is very important. And understanding that and doing a R&D in our interior, within the company, gives a little bit of challenging things to come up with a new idea, which will again needs a new skill set. And that what we believe is we are not going to get those skill sets ready-made from the market. So we need to develop in-house. We need to give the insight what really we want to do and what we really want to achieve. And we follow the iteration process. And we don't have a big dream that any ideas will flourish within a minute or within a year or two. So it takes time to adopt, and whatever is needed to customize or let's say make that platform more acceptable to the Nepalese community is very important. So we basically copy the technology or idea from abroad and we just localize that version in a very Nepalese way. We say we present the pizza in the local toppings. So the pizza is the popular fast food, and we just put local flavor on that and present to the Nepalese community, which is ready to take it as a local food. So that's the best part of our company as well. And what we see is we need to have a mindset that whatever we are dreaming or whatever we are aiming, we need to develop the resources based on our requirement. And I don't see there is a much challenge that getting resources for any technology development is not a big challenge in this country. So we just need to have a patience to transfer the knowledge and make them understand on what actually they are building and what problem they are solving. And if we have the index, or let's say if we have a dashboard which will show each and every second what we have created impact with that single technology, how many lives we are touching every single day, how many lives we have changed with that technology, creates more enthusiasm and the energy on the developers to go deep, learn more, to give more output on the technology side. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. Thank you very much. So basically, what you see in the metaphysical world is defining the skill sets that you need to adopt, and you're basically making sure those are inculcated in your company, where available in Nepal, but if not, you're bringing them in from outside, which is exactly the core of how the digital world works. Thank you for that, Biswas. Now, I hope the caffeine is kicked in this morning. I'm seeing some faces that are starting to smile and nod in response to our conversation, so that's always a good sign. Maybe we can move over to the Q&A session now? Oh, okay. Lots of questions. Fantastic. So, okay. Interesting. So let me start with this one from Mr. Neeraj Bania, okay? How can the digital world incorporate the persons not connected digitally? How can it revolutionize in a short span of time? It requires a booming environment which can be far away from the reality to the person not in connection. So I think the crux of this question is, how do you get folks who are not included in the economy included? And how do you make sure that the digital dividend is more equitably distributed? Okay, so maybe over to Rajyeshwari, since you're smiling.
One thing which I already mentioned, we need to do some practical implementations of setting up, leveraging the community-based spirit and do digital literacy so that it's very inclusive for women, for elderly, for differently abled. And also secondly, give them the other part of getting their creative intelligence, their social intelligence, emotional intelligence done, because that's anyway it's going to be required in the digital ecosystem as well as for their own personal mastery. Did I answer that question?
I think so. I don't know who in the audience it came from, but it sounded as good an answer as can be. It's a very broad question, right?
Yeah.
So moving on to another question. This is an interesting one from Mr. Raman Shrestha. So kindly share your views on taxing the digital giants, Facebook, Google, and others, and regulating them on how they use users' data for more data protection and privacy. Thanks. Okay. So that's a global sort of question. So over to you, Alberto. What are your views? Because, you know, if you read the news, and I'm sure we all have, Zuckerberg has asked for this. Pichai has asked for this. So if technology giants themselves are raising their hand and saying, hey guys, come regulate us, there must be an issue. How do you deal with this? And how do you enforce a taxation regime that's equitable?
Thank you, Dipta. Thank you for the question, which is very, very smart, because highlights something which is overarching and which we did not have yet time today to touch. Global connectivity is reshaping the world much beyond the digital sphere. The issue of taxing giants in the digital economy is not necessarily deriving from their business model per se, but it's derived by the fact that the physical world is designed in a way which is not consistent with what technology is delivering in terms of future ecosystems. What I mean is that fiscality around the world is based wherever on a nation-state approach. So you pay taxes based on where you are delivering your services, and you deliver your services if you have an organization on the ground, which is not consistent anymore with the way the business is more and more performed on a global scale. And the consequence of this is not only going to be that, for sure, Amazon and the Googles of the world and the Facebooks are going to be taxed in a different way. But these will bring about a new need of cooperation between governments and countries, coordination of policies that will have to be enacted globally in a fairly homogeneous way. A connected world is a world where the power of the people need to be delivered on a scale which goes beyond the traditional definition of a nation. And this is something that in 50 years, I think is going to be a transition which we will have gone through for the reason that the world is so much connected, as much as for reason deriving from climate change. We are more and more facing issues which are global and that need a global answer. So the point is that only from a global perspective, a proper answer on how to tax digital giants will come about.
Thank you, Alberto. Moving over to Biswas, this is an interesting question and a topic that we addressed towards the last segment, but maybe we can re-emphasize this from a more practical view, like what are you actually seeing in your company, right? The question is, with the rise of IT usage, advancements in AI, should Nepal fear job loss in the next decade? Or will the job vacancies proportionately decrease because of IT? I think the question is, to paraphrase it, what sorts of jobs do you see as being more relevant? How do you account for the change in the composition of the workforce? And what sort of people are you looking for in your company to hire going forward?
So what I see for next decade on IT side, or like the qualification which is required on IT in Nepali context is like more on data, and which will like creates more value for the community. So what I see is like there will be equal opportunity to have like tons of job on IT side, and I don't see there will be definitely like challenge to lose job on the other aspect of the domain as well. So when there is like the processing things happening, then the decision making or like the marketing side, or let's say that kind of domains job can be a little bit reduced, but at the same time the same number of job can be, or even like more job can be created on the IT side. So I'll just touch one example, like for the Warren Buffett to invest in a stock market, he has like hundreds of people to evaluate the stock market every single day. And if there is an AI aspect on that side, so if like there is the data analytics which helps to evaluate the previous, or let's say the past 10 years data to see what trend is happening or what's going to be changed in the economy in coming days, will most probably within a fraction of a second creates the insight whether this stock is good or the other stock is bad. So in that scenario, maybe there is a risk of losing hundreds of jobs who were doing the evaluation for the stock market since past 10 years. So what I see is like, I share like the AI or data will create equality in the community. That's the aspect, is like everyone is not a Warren Buffett, but definitely with the data analytics, everyone will have an insight where to invest and where to make money and where I can lose money if I stick with that aspect. So I see like there is an equal opportunity for all the jobs, but moving ahead, most probably there will be a very good opportunity for IT and the data specialists who can create a difference on the analytics side, which gives insight to the general people who don't have a deep knowledge on any particular domain.
Thank you, Shah. So I picked up two themes that you kind of touched upon, right? One, this idea of technology leveling the playing field, which I think is an entire debatable topic on its own. But also you mentioned this idea that, look, on a net basis, technology and digital connectivity are more likely than not to create jobs faster than the rate at which they consume or eliminate jobs. And I agree with that perspective completely. And just to kind of share some of my own experience in this ecosystem, which I'm very encouraged by, you know, every time I visit a client or a up-and-coming startup or basically a technology-enabled SME, what gives me immense hope is the composition of the labor force within these companies. Okay, on average, to take your company as an example, the average worker staff in F1 Soft, the age is somewhere around the 22-year-old mark, if I'm not mistaken, right? And the other statistic to add to that, which comes back to a question about, you know, how do you get people included in the digital economy? If you look at the composition of your workforce, and I don't know exactly what it is, but I'm willing to bet it's predominantly reflecting Nepal as a whole, meaning it's not just a workforce that is comprised of people who were born and raised in Kathmandu, but has much more representation from other parts of Nepal. Is that a correct assessment?
Yeah, that's correct. So most of the people, like the average age in our company is 23. Okay. And so almost like every part of country, like there's a representation from every part of country. And it's a diverse, and so that it's like helpful to get insight internally as well.
Just add to that.
Please.
Just emphasize on this. Creativity and innovation are must for the AI. So more creative we are, lesser the chances are we'll lose jobs. And another aspect is, even in technology, coming from a data analytics background, cognitive skills are going to be very, very important. What do we do with the data? How do we generate actionable insights? That is going to be very important, because just having the data is not going to do any good unless and until it's a knowledge and information for us, which will help us to take more decisions.
Thank you. It's almost like you had this ability to see the future, because the question I was going to ask you, you've already answered. And the question was basically, how do you integrate technology and spirituality better? And I think you couldn't have given a better response than the one you just gave. Okay, we're coming towards the end of the session. And I just want to take a quick moment to thank my esteemed panel members for their time and their insight. I've really enjoyed conversing around this topic on email in preparation for the session, this morning in preparation for this session, and the day before yesterday. It's been a real great learning experience for me, hearing this varied perspectives from a global, from a local, as well as a non-metaphysical sort of angle, which is really, really interesting and informative. I hope the audience has also found this session to be helpful in kind of forming your own sorts of thoughts going forward. I hope the conversation has helped provoke some debate in your own minds as to what the future of the digital world holds for us as Nepalis, as global citizens, and basically members of a large community of digital adopters everywhere in the world. Thank you very much for your time.